The sound of my hand hitting his face didn't feel dramatic in the moment. It felt desperate, sharp, almost ugly, like a last bad idea you throw at the wall when time runs out. 1 second I was invisible, just another uniform blending into the background. The next, the entire room inhaled at once, and the most untouchable man I'd ever seen was staring at me like I'd just broken some unspoken law of the universe. Security started shouting, people stood up, someone yelled, "What the hell is she doing?" And right there in that split second after the slap, I knew I had already lost my job, my reputation, maybe my freedom. And then he swayed, his eyes went blank, and he collapsed. I didn't grow up planning to be brave. I grew up planning to survive. I was raised in a place where keeping your head down wasn't cowardice, it was strategy. You learned early which voices mattered and which ones didn't. And people like me, people who cleaned, served, stayed quiet. Our voices didn't count for much. I learned that lesson the hard way, watching adults talk over my mother, watching officials ignore her, watching my family shrink every time we needed help and didn't get it. By the time I was old enough to work, I already knew the rules. Don't argue, don't draw attention, don't think your instincts matter more than someone else's title. So, when I got a job at a luxury hotel downtown, I treated it like a fragile gift. The floors shined like mirrors, the guests wore confidence like cologne, and the power dynamics were obvious within 5 minutes. Executives were gods, managers were messengers. People like me were furniture that moved. Still, I paid attention. I always had. Maybe that came from growing up watching my mother ignore her own pain until it was too late. Or maybe it was just the habit of someone who knows mistakes cost more when you're poor. I noticed details. Shaky hands, forced smiles, the way someone breathes when their body is fighting them. I didn't say much, but I noticed everything. The night of the fundraiser was chaos wrapped in elegance. Big donors, investors, cameras everywhere. Everyone was tense because one man was coming, Marcus Hale. Tech billionaire, self-made, ruthless reputation, the kind of guy people straightened their backs for without realizing it. When he walked in, the temperature of the room changed. Conversations softened. Managers hovered. He didn't smile much, just nodded like the world existed on his schedule. I noticed him immediately, and not for the reasons everyone else did. He moved stiffly, like every step was calculated. His jaw clenched when he thought no one was looking. His breathing was shallow, controlled, like he was holding himself together by force. I'd seen that before. It made my stomach tighten. I told myself to stop. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't anyone important. He was probably just stressed. Rich people are always stressed, right? But as the night went on, it got worse. He snapped at a waiter for spilling water, his voice sharper than necessary. When he laughed, it sounded thin. When he stood still too long, he shifted his weight like his legs didn't trust him. I mentioned it quietly to a supervisor. Just said, "Hey, something feels off." She barely looked at me. "He's fine," she said, already turning away. "Don't create problems tonight." That was the end of that conversation. Marcus eventually took the stage. Applause, thundered, phones came out, and he gripped the podium like it was the only solid thing in the room. He started speaking confident at first, but then his words slowed. I could see sweat forming at his temple under the lights. His eyes lost focus for half a second, came back, then drifted again. My heart started pounding. I'd seen this exact moment before. Years ago, watching my mother insist she was okay while the world waited politely for her to collapse. That memory slammed into me so hard it felt physical. I stepped closer. Security glanced at me, already annoyed. Marcus paused mid-sentence, swallowed hard, and said, "I'm fine," like he was daring his body to agree with him. People laughed nervously. They wanted him to be fine. It was easier. I could have stopped there. Everyone else did. That was the safe choice. But then his hand started shaking, subtle, almost invisible if you weren't looking for it. His knees bent slightly, and I realized something horrifying. Everyone was waiting for permission, waiting for someone more important, more qualified, more authorized to act first. I didn't have permission. What I had was time running out. I moved. Someone grabbed my arm. Someone shouted. Marcus looked down at me, furious, confused. "What are you doing?" he hissed. There wasn't time to explain. There wasn't time to be polite. I did the only thing I knew might shock his system enough to buy a few seconds. I slapped him. The sound cracked through the room. Gasps exploded. Marcus stiffened eyes wide, and then his body gave up. He collapsed hard, hitting the floor with a sound I'll never forget. Chaos swallowed everything. Security restrained me instantly. People shouted accusations before they asked questions. Phones were already recording. I kept my eyes on Marcus, watching his chest, praying. I knew exactly how this could end. The police came. I was escorted out like a criminal. By the time I got home, I'd already lost my job. Headlines hit the internet before I could sleep. Worker attacks. Billionaire. Violence at elite event. No one asked why. They never do. At the hospital, doctors worked fast. Hours later, one of them reviewed the security footage. He watched the moment over and over. The slap, the brief jolt, the delayed collapse. He said something quietly that changed everything. That impact triggered a response. It delayed full cardiac arrest. Without it, the patient likely wouldn't have survived long enough to reach the hospital. Marcus woke up 2 days later. The first thing he asked wasn't about his company or his schedule. He asked about me. About the woman who hit him. When the doctor explained what happened, Marcus went silent. He remembered the shock, the sudden clarity the second where everything snapped back before darkness. He also remembered being warned and ignoring it. We met a week later. No cameras, no lawyers in the room, just two people sitting across from each other, both still shaken for different reasons. He apologized. Not the public kind. The quiet kind that cost something. He told me he'd spent his whole life believing control was strength, that ignoring weakness was survival. That night proved him wrong. Publicly, he told the truth. Charges were dropped. The story flipped. Some people called me a hero. Others said I was reckless and just got lucky. Both missed the point. What changed wasn't just my life. Policies shifted. Training changed. People started listening sooner, acting faster. I went back to school, learned formally what I'd once learned through fear and loss. Not because I wanted attention, but because I wanted to be ready next time. Here's the uncomfortable part. Not everyone was happy about it. Some people said it set a dangerous precedent. That people like me shouldn't decide when to act. That hierarchy exists for a reason. Maybe they're right. Maybe lines matter. But I know this. Silence has a body count. Waiting feels safe until it kills someone. The night I slapped a billionaire, I didn't feel powerful. I felt terrified. I felt small. I felt like I was about to lose everything. And I did lose a lot. But I didn't lose myself to regret. So I'll leave you with this. If you were in that room watching someone fade while everyone waited, what would you have done? Would you have followed the rules or trusted your instincts? Was I right or was I reckless? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand, because stories like this aren't really about one moment. They're about the choices we make when the world tells us to stay quiet.